Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are here in the CPJ offices in New York with Rodney Sieh. Rodney is the founder and editor of Front Page Africa, based in Liberia, and is also a member of CPJ's Africa Advisory Group. Rodney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
So for those of you just joining us, there was a previous link. We will repost the link from the corrected link for the new live video. We had to abandon the previous link due to a technical difficulty. But anyway, Rodney, thank you so much again for joining us. The main reason we wanted to speak with you today was to talk about some of the new press freedom issues facing West Africa, facing Liberia in particular. Can you tell us about what some of these new developments are that you've seen?
Well, I think if you go back to governments before this government, the issues are still the same. We have defamation laws and libel laws in the books that have been there for years that are still there. And unless we change those laws, we'll continue to see these problems coming up. Basically, anyone can sue anyone for millions of dollars in a country where the poverty line is so low that nobody can afford anything, much less the media. And so I've been in 3 or 4 situations where this come up, where these outrageous penalties and fines are put on me because of something that we wrote about. And so it's the issues haven't changed. It's because we haven't been able to actually remove them from the books, although there have been efforts by the Press Union of Liberia and other activist organizations to push this issue. It's still on the books, and until those issues are erased, we will continue to see situations like this where a civil law case can be used against a newspaper to have it shut down.
Well, and so, you know, basically when you talk about these libel laws that are being used, how are they being misused exactly? Like, can you give us an example?
Well, in the previous case I had in 2013, there was an issue with the former minister who accused us of corruption, of writing about his corrupt stories. And the situation was that we published an audit report from the General Auditing Commission, which alleged that there were some incidents that took place at the Ministry of Agriculture. And so they used that against us, even though there was a government audit, to take us to court. But the fines were so outrageous, the fees to pay to push for appeal to the Supreme Court was so high we couldn't afford it. So it ended up being sentenced to jail for 5,000 years for money I couldn't afford to pay. So that's where a lot of critics misunderstand what happened in that case. So I think these fees, like on Monday we had a situation where we published an advertisement in the paper regarding a land notice. Because in Liberia, the law says before you survey your land or before you put land up for sale, you have to advertise in the paper for it to be seen by other people who want to contest. And that's what we did. Apparently, 2 families involved in this squabble went to court. One of them actually ran on the ticket of the ruling party. So the fact of the matter, was summoned to appear in court on the 15th of April. And in June, there's 2 summonses. And those dates had not been reached.
I see.
And then they sent officers at our offices to have my staff arrested and the office shut down.
So, yeah, so it seems like it's almost a blurring of kind of law enforcement and civil disputes.
Yeah, so although the government says they don't know what's going on, but the government is the courts.
Right.
The government is, Liberia has 3 branches of government. They have the executive branch, the judiciary branch, and the legislative branch. So one of those branches has some issues, and those issues need to be addressed. Because it's a recurring theme. Every time the government changes hands, these same issues are still on the books. Sure. So until we can get these issues off the book, we'll continue to have problems like these. Not just for me. I mean, people think that it's just the journalist, it's just the media, but media has changed. Today we have bloggers, we have Facebookers, we have Twitters, we have all kinds of social media activities. Anybody can get up any day and pick on anyone who they don't like and say, I sue you for $10 million in a country that's poor, and you'll be dragged into mud.
Sure.
So these issues need to come off the book. It's not just for me. I know I always tell my people, my staff and those who criticize me, I said, I'm not running for a beauty pageant. I'm not running to be a king but I'm just doing the job. So these things, I'm not trying to be popular with anybody, but at the same time, we need to ensure that these things don't stay on the books.
Right.
I had a situation I think a year ago, when I was going to Canada for a fellowship. And I had a problem with the visa because in the system, I'm labeled as a criminal.
Wow. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Right, because of these, basically what comes down to civil dispute.
Yeah, I'm a criminal because the libel law in Liberia is a criminal offense. So they had to the parliamentarians in Canada had to get involved.
Wow.
To push my case. The current Minister of Immigration, Ahmed Hussein, was involved in my case to tell the Canadian patrol people that, look, this is a political issue, this guy's a journalist, and he's not a criminal, before I was allowed to go to Canada. So these things have a way of affecting your life.
Right, absolutely. Well, and how widespread of a problem is this in Liberia right now?
Well, it is, because the media, we're trying to do a lot of things differently. And I think the press union, the Liberian Media Institute, they're all trying to get involved in the ways. The groups like CMEX also have been pushing this issue. They're trying to find ways where this libel, defamation, criminal law thing can come off the books. And there are efforts being made. There are situations where I think the last president pushed this forward. It hasn't been signed in the law. So maybe this government the new government needs to take it up and push it. I think I hear a lot of people saying the president is in favor of press freedom. He's in favor of, but then here's a chance to do something about it. There's a law in the books that labels a journalist, a blogger, a Facebooker, someone who Twitters, a criminal.
Yeah.
It's on the books.
Right.
Maybe today it's in my situation, so everybody's laughing. All my critics will say, oh, we got him. But tomorrow it might be you. It might be you who blog on the Facebook or Twitter.
How the new government has affected press freedom issues in Liberia and specifically these issues of libel and defamation.
I mean, the president, George Weah, in his inaugural address, spoke about his efforts to support press freedom, and that he likes the press. In fact, yesterday on Wednesday, he had a meeting with the press. My paper was invited, but there was other people who were there. But
was there a reason for that? Was it?
I mean, we've been critical of the government lately, and when I say critical, we only doing what we did in the past government. I tell people, I said, look, this country been through a lot. I was a little boy in 1979 when there was a rice riot. People died. There were people running the street helter-skelter, and that began. Until that moment, Liberia was they had one of the best economies next to Japan. Everything was rolling high, and that coup it was because of a rice riot, the price of rice. The progressives said they could bring the price of rice down. And the irony of it all is that the price of rice never went back down after that incident. It kept going up.
Sure.
It remains a problem today. So the issues of, in fact, a year later when the military took over from Talbot, they said that they came to liberate Liberia from corruption, from nepotism, and all of these factors that were talked about those years are still happening today. All because we have not changed our mentality about the way we approach, life. And things have changed, but they pretty much remain the same.
So I guess when we're talking about, George Weah having this was it like a closed door meeting with publications or the media, or was this just? It
was a closed door, because I had the recording from my staff on the ground, and it was a closed door meeting with media executives.
But not all media executives, basically.
No, not all media executives. I know the BBC guy was not, the BBC correspondent was not there, the AFP wasn't there, I wasn't there, and a few other people were not there.
Is this I guess I'm wondering, when we hear about closed doors or preferential treatment of media, how big of a problem is that in Liberia?
I mean, sometimes leaders of the day often feel that some media that don't write good about them or don't sing their praises are against them. And that's not the case. I've had friends who died in the Civil War. I had a friend who was a big basketball player, Archie Green. He died for nothing. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a basketball star of the high school, and he was shot. He was killed. And another classmate, Arnold Martin, who died in the war. My next door neighbor, Henry Langford, died in the Civil War. And I will feel guilty if those deaths are in vain. If I don't see things that happened yesterday happening today, if I don't try and correct it in the voice that I have, then the memories will go in vain.
Sure.
So my advocacy is not about targeting anybody. It's just about saying, hey, there's corruption. Hey, there's nepotism. Hey, there's greed. Hey, there's too much power, Keep the government in check. There's a reason the media is the fourth estate. Because if the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary fail, the media steps in and correct it.
So, I mean, what are the prospects? Like, how do you see things panning out in Liberia now with the new government and its relationship with the media and with the press?
I think this president, I don't think he's a bad president. I just think he's just going through the problems his predecessor had.
How long has it been since his inauguration?
He was inaugurated in January.
Right, yeah.
And the problem has been throughout history, and not just Liberia, everywhere, it's the people around the president. Because they have power in their hands, they tend to ill-advise the president. They tend to do things that they'll satisfy them, not him. So they tell him things that he wants to hear. And I think the danger for Africa and a lot of African countries is that if you embrace sycophancy, if you embrace people who just sing your praises, that's how dictatorship starts. And that's how we need to, as the media, we need to make sure that these things don't creep up on us. Because tomorrow, you don't want to know Steve Biko, you don't want to know Nelson Mandela. There are a lot of cases where journalists who go after the story end up being dead. I don't want to be one of those journalists. I'm going after the story because I feel it will change my country. If my country is going the wrong direction, I feel I need to be there to help them put it in check because I have a voice. I have a medium that a lot of people listen to, a lot of people read. So I need to make sure that when I put something out, I make sure I cross my I's, I dot my T's. I dot my I's and cross my T's to make sure that these things don't crop up on us.
Sure.
And some people misunderstand it, and they just think I'm just doing it because I hate people. I don't hate people. I didn't hate the last government. I don't hate this government. I don't hate Charles Taylor.
Well, I just wonder. I guess what are the perspectives? But in particular, do you have recommendations for the government and how they can shape their policies?
If the government really wants to, and my understanding is the meeting yesterday was to calm the storm with the media. I think the government wants to throw an olive branch to the country, to the media in Liberia. It should take up this libel defamation law off the books. I think if Mr. Weah, the president of Weah, can get that off the book, his legacy with the media will go way up.
Right. So in your estimation, these libel laws are the biggest issue right now? It triggers
everything else. It triggers everything else. As long as that law is on the books, Liberia has a problem. Tomorrow morning, a CPJ, they get calls every day around the continent, around the world about people trampling on people's rights. As long as that law is still there, CPJ will be getting calls every freaking day.
Basically, that law provides sort of the vehicle for all of these attacks on.
And there's a reason why our former president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, signed off to the Table Mountain Declaration. That declaration says a lot about press freedom, about these kinds of treatment to the media. So if we can, I think I will appeal to the Press Union of Liberia, CIMEX, and Liberian Media Society to really get on all these issues together and appeal to the government to see if they can address them. It's not just the executive, it's the legislative branch. It is the judiciary branch. And more important, the judiciary, because it is their reputation that's on the line. Every time these things happen, they say it's not the government involved, it's the courts. But the court is part of the government. So the Chief Justice has a ball in his court to really see that this is a bad thing for my branch, and I have to address it. Because there have been so many cases in the judicial branch that have been let loose, and that people are just, that they don't feel they can get a fair trial in the court system. My first court case, I couldn't find a lawyer to represent me. Everybody was afraid because they didn't want to go before the judges, because the judges didn't like me.
Wow.
You see, so it's very...
It leads to these personal issues.
Yeah, and it's hard not to get personal in Liberia because you're fighting, it's like you're fighting a war. You're fighting a war to educate the public. You're fighting a war to make sure that things change. And there's all these forces who are benefiting, or whose friends or relatives are in the system. They don't want it to change. They want things to be the same. And those are the ones who come after you. And most times I try not to respond to them on social media, but sometimes you can't help it because they say things like to get to you, to get on your skin. And you have to just be in a position where you can respond to them in a way that it puts them in check. And that's what we try to do.
So now, what are the issues facing your newspaper now, or for front page Africa?
I mean, it's not just my newspaper. If you send a delegation to Liberia now and speak to every media head, they will tell you they're struggling.
Right.
It's not a secret. We're all struggling because the government has this policy. The government is the biggest advertiser in Liberia. So they have this policy that's very unfair. It's a tax system. We all pay taxes. But they tell you, in order for you to collect a bill from a client, you have to have a tax clearance. That tax clearance is valid for 3 months. So you get your bill, you submit it to a government entity with the tax clearance valid. The government entity holds that payment in their hand until the tax clearance expired.
I see.
And then they call you and say, your money is ready, come for your money, but bring the new tax
So you have
clearance.
to renew it every 3 months.
So you have to renew it every 3 months to get paid.
Right, wow.
So most municipalities cannot afford to pay that money.
Wow.
So the money piles up. At the end of the year, the government tells the media, we're broke, we don't have any money. But we can give you what? A handshake. So if the government owes you $100,000, a handshake is about $10,000. You've been paying taxes on the $100,000, but you get $10,000 in payment.
Either way, what you have is kind of another way to regulate the media through this system of clearances.
And before I left, there were inquiries made to the tax authority in Liberia about our tax issues. There was a surprising that we are current with our taxes. We don't owe any taxes. But if we are owed taxes, they could have used it to shut me down under the legal sense.
Sure.
So they find all these loopholes to go after you in any way they can. So until the media can be able to address all of these little loopholes, we continue to have problems. The government needs to really look at this issue because they're the biggest advertisers. And if they keep strangulating the media like that, before the end of this year, a lot of my colleagues are bleeding. They will tell you they will shut the office down because they can't afford to pay the taxes, or they can't afford to pay employees, or they can't afford to do certain things. And I hear people, they try to demonize the media. They say, the media don't pay the employees well. But how can they pay the employees well if they can't collect the taxes, the government can't pay them, they're being strangulated? It's not that they want to do like that, but they have to find ways to survive.
So I guess, if it feels almost wrong to rank them, but if you had to put kind of some of these issues in order, like it seems that the libel and defamation issues are by far the most severe, and kind of everything comes from those. Right. But this tax system or this clearance system also seems to be quite a burden on
It is, and I'm sure in countries like Kenya and other countries in East Africa and West Africa, they all have those similar problems. And once the governments know that these problems are there and they're affecting people, they will continue to put them there.
Right. Well, the advertising, the government being the biggest advertiser is not uncommon in a lot of African countries.
No, it's not.
Right?
It's not. And that's why a lot of media struggle. And now the new thing that's also affecting it is that most NGOs are taking journalists from this profession. The government now hiring a lot of journalists. This new government has hired at least a dozen people from the media circle to be in the government. Sure. So the media landscape is dropping. And I think the danger there is that if some of our colleagues come in the government, when it's time to vote, the president of the press union, those who are in the government will put someone there who's favored the government. That's the danger that presents itself. And I think it's an issue that we, not limited just to Liberia, it's limited everywhere in the continent. And we as a country, I think, need to look at these little issues. And I always say things that I see it, I don't hold back, and I get called out when people say I'm too harsh. But sometimes you have to be harsh to get things done, to get people to understand what's going on. And what I just said about the taxes, about the defamation of a libel, is something that always they target you through those means. And as a media institution, you have to be ready to withstand the barrage of criticism, because I can be out there criticizing people, don't want people to criticize me back. There's a thin line you have to draw, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're fighting for something that you believe in. You're fighting for something that, and the thing that's happening to me happened to my great uncle Albert Port. He had the same problem. During the time, the people called him all kinds of names. Today, he's a hero in Liberia. And so, I think the generation we live in, we forget too quickly how those before us, carried on, and things like that. It helps us put things into perspective, in the direction we want to go.
All right. Well, we're running a little low on time, but is there anything else that you would want to talk about specific to Liberia or to Front Page Africa that, again, I just come back to what can be done about the situation there, and what would you like to see happen in Liberia?
I would like to see a country that respects the press. I would like to see a country that respects press freedom, that respects opinions. And I know in every country, there are two sides of the aisle. The people who love, the people who hate, the people who want to be in, the people who want to be out. But there has to be a common ground. It may be a journalist today, but tomorrow, the bloggers, those on Twitter, those on Facebook, anybody, there's some countries in Africa where Facebook is not allowed. There are countries where people don't allow to tweet. And we have that access or that opportunity to do so in our country. And in essence, they label you as a journalist and a media person because they feel that because they're twittering, or they be on Facebooking, then they're safe. But tomorrow when it's their case, guess what? Who's going to come to your rescue? The journalists, the press. So, and I get this all the time. There were people who in the last government were my enemies, or they said they were my enemies, they hated me. And toward the end, when they lost touch with the government, they started coming to me to help them push the issues. And that's what the media is for. It's not there to take sides. It's there to make sure the government is in line. It's there to make sure that people understand that the government should be in line. It's there to make sure that we all, as a group of people, a country, can reconcile our differences, but at the same time, let the world know that Liberia has left this war situation, is on a path projecting toward democracy, and we all need to make sure that it stays there.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Well, Rodney, thank you so much again for joining us. We're here with Rodney Sieh, who is the founder and editor of Front Page Africa, based in Liberia, and also a member of CPJ's Africa Advisory Group. Thank you so much, Rodney,
Thanks so much
again for joining us, and thank you for watching.
Thanks.